time. My goodness, Saturday night in Norman was very special for that team. Can you imagine the Adrian Martinez if you get a little bit of that the rest of the way?
Yeah, K-State's going to be a problem if that's the way Adrian's going to play. Anywhere close to that, I'm not sure he can replicate that on a night-in, night-out basis. But he was really special. Chris Kleiman kept talking about he needs to flip the switch, and it was a nice little phrase, but there must have actually been a switch. I can't fathom how a guy could play so poorly against Tulane in a loss and just not look engaged in the game and then turn around and do that to the Oklahoma Sooners. It was really impressive. Redefining victory for Kansas State. But as you guys know, you mess around in this league and you take your eyes off of the task at hand, you're going to lose at home to Texas Tech, and that's the next task for Kansas State.
Tim, for Adrian Martinez individually, what kind of catharsis was that to win a one-score game among the many other things he did the other night?
Yeah, I mean, we should point that out, that he didn't turn the ball over again. He was being so cautious about having errors in those first three games that he forgot to play football. And he played his butt off and still had no turnovers and won a close game on national TV, basically did everything many Nebraska fans have told me that he could never do because he's a choker. And I think he won't admit it, but there was a lot of satisfaction in that. But he also mentioned in postgame that he felt like he let his teammates down, that he left a lot on the field. He just he didn't play the kind of game he needed to play against Tulane, and they ended up losing. And he didn't leave anything out. He emptied the tank against Oklahoma. He just brought it all, including up to that last, 55-yard run that set up his touchdown that sealed the victory, essentially.
Tim, what is it about this matchup? I mean, it'd be one thing if they had knocked off Oklahoma a couple times, but, I mean, the fact that Kansas State is trying to get back to the mountaintop, and during this process over the last few years, they've been able to just consistently beat the Sooners. What do you think it is about this matchup between these two that results in K-State having so much success?
Brother, I have no idea. That's 4 out of 6 they've won in Norman in a row. And what's really interesting about it is they also beat them with Colin Klein at quarterback, and he called the same play he sealed the victory with for Adrian Martinez on the last touchdown, the quarterback power. And so that's how long it's been going. That player became coach, became offensive coordinator to call the same number that he had called for him back in the day. I can't explain why Kansas State has given Oklahoma so many problems through the years. It started, before Bob Stoops arrived, and they went and hired a former K-State defensive coordinator to take over. They've now hired a former K-State defensive coach and player to take over. It's just an interesting relationship between these two schools.
So, the way climate is, they're not going to get too high. They're not going to get too low. I know they had the disappointing weekend against Tulane, but they bounced back with what they did in Norman. What has been the message this week with Texas Tech? I'm sure that didn't hurt that they beat Texas to get any attention. In fact, if there was not enough of one.
Yeah, you're right. We got two teams coming off huge wins playing on ESPN Plus, as you guys pointed out on your Twitter account. It's kind of a weird situation, but yeah, that does get your attention. They did an incredible job coming back, getting off the mat against Texas. Texas had an opportunity to put them away in the third quarter and really squandered it and ended up losing. But yeah, he talked about you essentially played 12 one-game seasons, and every game is a season. You got to go out there and take care of business in the week that you're playing. And if that message can resonate through this program now down the stretch, they're going to be tough to beat. They've got Tech this weekend, then they go to Iowa State, which I think is going to have their hands full with Kansas this weekend, which is still awkward to say, but I do believe that's going to be a tough game for the Cyclones. And then they got an off week to regroup. So if they can get to 5-1 at the turn, so to speak, I think this program's in a really good situation, even though they've got a stretch with your Baylor Bears and Oklahoma State and Texas on down the line in the second half of the season. But they will roll into that off week to get healthy, and I think feel pretty good about themselves if they can be 5-1.
Tim, after what happened with both these teams last week, Tech and Kansas State, how much is the enthusiasm and the vibe around this game jumped up? Because if you asked most of the world, this would be two teams that were coming off losses coming into here, and now they're both coming off big upset wins.
Yeah, it is interesting. And, I think the fans are very fired up. I just saw a tweet where they're down to 750 tickets for Saturday's game. They're less than 600 for Oklahoma State. They've still got plenty of tickets available for Texas because, it's Texas. Who wants to see them? And then here's the great one. The KU game to end the season is basically sold out. There's fewer than 100 tickets left. So it's really amazing how fired up people are and engaged. And I got to be honest, you guys will appreciate this. I've been covering Kansas State sports since I was in college in the 80s, and I've never seen this fan base as engaged as it is with football and basketball at the same time, because Jerome Tang might have a statue built for him in this town before he ever coaches a game, because people love this dude so much. And, these two head coaches have this fan base really riled up.
Tim, I was just curious, all of us who follow and cover the Big 12, I think we're all trying to make sense of kind of how the league stacks up, and it might just be where everybody's pretty similar overall, but how did your opinion change, or was anything confirmed seeing Oklahoma on Saturday night, even in that loss?
Well, they're human. I mean, they had flaws, and K-State exposed them, and that's still a really good team. It still might be the best team in the conference. We'll see how it plays out, but I think K-State put some things on film for everyone to follow. But I think this compacted the league even more. The top may not be as far away as what we thought. I mean, Baylor has a loss. I picked Baylor to win. I think Oklahoma State's pretty good, but I think this is the most compressed, if you want to say it that way, this league has ever been, because Kansas and Tech were picked to finish 9-10 in this conference, and they're both 1-0 in this conference. And Kansas looks like a problem for everyone, and Tech is going to be pesky. So it's a mess. We all know it's a mess in a positive way, because this conference is so competitive and so entertaining and such good brand of football. But I'm just waiting for the spin to come as Oklahoma and Texas maybe slide down the standings of the conference, that the national media will say, well, the Big 12 just isn't very good because their leaders isn't Oklahoma or Texas, and they've got 2 losses. So I can see it coming right now, but I'm telling you, this is going to be the future of the Big 12. You get your snot kicked out of you every week if you're not ready to play.
In fact, there was a little bit of that.
There was, yep.
There was a little bit of that late Sunday, even during the Kansas State and Oklahoma game, where you heard about the Big 12 is wide open. That is true. Oklahoma ran it, as we know, for the longest of time. Oklahoma State had their run. TCU had their run. Baylor had their run. And then, of course, last year, Oklahoma State almost again. But you already hear that. Isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm.
It's just
after Texas lost is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is that's when it started chirping. Yeah, I saw it right away. Texas lost and Oklahoma's in danger, so must be a down year in the Big 12. But we're kind of all used to that kind of thinking, aren't we?
Yeah, it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. I mean, they were praising Texas for a loss earlier in the season, and all of a sudden it's like that never happened. That must have been a fluke. Because the conference sucks. It gets exhausting, and I honestly won't miss any of that once these teams are gone. But I also know this: I don't think Oklahoma's going to miss Kansas State one bit.
No,
True.
I don't think so. In Kansas State, remember, they gave Texas fits for a while. They kind of had Mac Brown's number for a little bit too.
They did. And what's interesting, kind of an untold story, is K-State was trying to get Vince Young. There was a lot of talk that he might be a secret commit. There was old recruiting stories. It's fantastic. Mac Brown essentially ran Bill Snyder's offense with Vince Young to win a national title. And, that quarterback run game was so prominent. And then after he was gone, K-State climbed back on top of Texas and just started whacking them, even when they were pretty good. They kept beating them. Texas is strung on. Tom Herman had no problem with K-State. And Sark got a win last year over K-State. So that's something K-State and Chris Kleiman are going to need to correct.
Tim, looking at K-State now after you've got like this first month of the season as evidence, I think we're starting to kind of figure some teams out in a way. What have you figured out? I mean, obviously you saw the good now with Adrian Martinez that everybody was kind of waiting on, and Deuce Vaughn's fantastic. But what else do you feel like you've kind of figured out, or are you still wondering about in terms of this football team?
Well, oddly, Kansas State's defense gave up 500 and plus yards against Oklahoma, and I thought they were pretty good overall, just based on how good Oklahoma's offense can be and that sped up offense. They're going to have to be better, going to have to give up fewer points, but they got key stops through that game that enabled K-State to win. This is a really balanced team. Again, special teams played a role for Kansas State. Special teams were completely negated by Tulane, which was, Willie Fritz is a great coach and just took special teams out of the game. K-State, Oklahoma tied it up at 14-14, and next thing they know, Malik Knowles is crossing the 50 on the kickoff return and flips the field and flips the momentum right back. So this team has a little bit of everything, but they also have some flaws. They don't have great depth sometimes, and sometimes they don't have enough weapons. But if they can stay and hit the right notes, they're going to beat a lot of people.
Tim, always great to talk to you, man. We appreciate you and your story. How you feeling, man?
Feeling great. It is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, so everyone go get your PSA check.
Absolutely. Every family has been hit with that at some point. Tim, thanks for you and what you bring to the table with us covering Kansas State. Tim Fitzgerald, GoPowerCat.com, and involved in a lot more